In an up and down day in crypto in general, we had GBTC selling off down 3.71%, um, just off the lows of the day. At one point, selling down as low as 45.25, about 40 cents higher on the day on the close. And a lot of people wondering with the impending uh, Bitcoin futures ETF, BITO, on the docket. Is this the end of GBTC? And so we've got this 5 minute look right here, 5 minute chart to show you the sell off. A lot of people wondering why did this sell off happen? And the reality is there's a lot of factors that are going into this. You have to take into consideration the institutional side of things. You also have to take into account the fear side, or I'm sorry, the retail side of things, and then market psychology with fear and also FOMO. And if I pull back on this 5 minute chart, one of the things that I tried to keep in mind is that when you take into account the fact that on Friday we had this really big up day, um, basically like we closed down, or we came down to the same level that we were at on Thursday in GBTC, and so it's not this was really a panic reaction for a lot of people, but then also I posted here on Twitter to kind of show you here. I posted this today. GBTC selling off today as people are unloading it in preparation for tomorrow's ETF. And so it makes a lot of sense if I were to, move this to an hour chart. Obviously, your big sell-off is during this 11 o'clock hour. Of course, again, going back to, let me do a 30-minute chart. The biggest sell-off was between 12 and 12:30. And so that makes sense considering, and this is, by the way, Pacific time, so that would be 3 to 3:30 Eastern time during the New York session. So it makes sense that this is the sell-off time because this last hour was the last opportunity for people to unload their GBTC shares before the end of the close. And I suspected, and it seems to me to be the case, that the reason why people unloaded their GBTC shares is because they're looking towards the activation tomorrow of BITO, which is the futures tracking Bitcoin fund. Now, a lot of people wondering, like I said, is this the end of GBTC? And the short answer is no. And so I actually have had some exchanges with some people, not understanding why the sell-off happened. So part of this is what I put here: ETF hype. People are going to pile into it regardless of where it is trading. And the market psychology element of it, of if there's a new ETF, Grayscale has to be going to zero. That's what a lot of people think is going to happen. I don't believe so at all. Remember, GBTC still is ultimately going to at least generally reflect the price of Bitcoin as it has all the way since its inception. Obviously, not perfectly, but that's what it's going to do in the long run. And so, even though we got this big sell down today, I do anticipate that GBTC will still go well over $100. So what we're talking about here is the extent of the severity of the discount on the NAV, the net asset value. That is something that obviously I've done a lot of work on GBTC in the past, and I've made a lot of claims about what GBTC is going to do. And obviously, one of the things that I've been saying a lot on Twitter lately is be prepared to change and to adjust. And one of the things that I have had to adjust to is the fact that I was not expecting an ETF to happen in 2021. It still kind of surprises me that we're getting it. But the one caveat is that it's a futures trading ETF, which is, in my opinion, not an ideal ETF. And Grayscale itself is actually in the best position out of all of the other potential funds or potential ETFs to be a spot ETF, which is, in my opinion, a lot more favorable to investors. And so, what's actually really interesting is I had come across a CNBC article take for what it's worth that CNBC did this, but um, that Grayscale is close to filing an application for spot Bitcoin ETF. And so one of the big highlights is that um, they are going to, now this was a few days ago, this was Friday the 15th. So it looks like once the ETF futures ETF goes live tomorrow, again, as long as all goes according to plan, then Grayscale will put in its application for a spot ETF. And then the application will have a 75-day review period as per normal. And so uh, the thing to keep in mind is that the verdict is going to come. And so obviously we have this article here that I was looking at. If you have GBTC, if it is converted to an ETF, you will not need to take action and your management fee is going to get reduced. Grayscale is the largest company holder of fund holder of Bitcoin, actual Bitcoin. They hold it all. They don't. They only sell for management fees and things like that. So again, I don't think this is the end of GBTC, especially when you consider that they are going to potentially be in the driver's seat for being a spot Bitcoin ETF, which is much better in the long run for investors. I think it's safer in the long run for investors. And so while I do think in the near term we could get some selling action on GBTC, or that it will underperform uh, the underlying Bitcoin, I don't see this being something that is concerning in the long run. Again, the thing you have to keep into perspective is where did you buy? Now, I believe, and I'm going to say this again, I believe that Bitcoin, or I'm sorry, that GBTC will be over $100 easily before the cycle peak takes place. Beyond that, I'm not entirely sure. I don't know if my original price targets are going to be reasonable, considering the impact that the potential that the ETF is going to have on the premium. I can think of a lot of different scenarios that will take place. But again, to start off with, depending on where you bought GBTC, I had an exchange with some people. Let's see here. I had an exchange with some people here where I want to just share with you. From a swing trader's perspective or day trading, it makes sense if you were to sell your GBTC right now. But on the flip side, I wrote here, if you're hodling to cycle peak and you got in early, do you take capital gains so that you can buy a new fund and then take more capital gains at the peak? And that's ultimately a matter of, again, philosophy and positioning, because if you are of the opinion that Bitcoin is going to peak in 2021, then we don't have a whole lot of time left for that move to take place. Okay, and so my thought is if you bought GBTC, maybe you bought it down here, and then maybe you held through all this consolidation and all that kind of stuff, and now you're up here. Um, are you willing to take capital gains on that and then try to buy into the ETF, where we don't really know what the price action on the ETF is going to be like tomorrow or over the coming weeks or coming months? Are you going to buy into it if price is rapidly increasing and then take capital gains again if the cycle peaks here? Or are you planning on holding the ETF indefinitely? I think that's the thing that everybody needs to decide for themselves. For me personally, I am fully positioned for GBTC, and I will continue to be until the end of the cycle. I am not selling any of it until the cycle peak. And I have the ability and the comfort of being able to do that because I bought into GBTC early in the 2020 to 2024 having cycle. And so I'm okay. I mean, like, again, I've talked about this in previous videos before, but you can't be greedy. Um, you have an asset. If you bought GBTC, like if you bought at this green line at $24, you're almost at a 2x. And if you think about it, like what realistically year by year gives you a 2x? Let alone, I think that, like I said, GBTC is going to go up over $100, and if you bought it at $24, you're going to 4x at minimum if it goes over 100. And if GBTC goes up even higher, if it went up to 150, well, I mean, it's crazy, right? You're looking at 7 or an 8x. And so that's to me that's worth the trade-off, right? It's an asymmetric trade, and so you can't get too cute and too greedy. If you don't know what you're doing, you might as well just hold, and don't try to FOMO in or trade in and out of this thing. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention. The other thing that I wanted to mention is I'm curious about what this is going to look like because Grayscale will have a 75-day review period starting here in, let's see, starting here in October. And so if you, let me get my tools up here for a second. Um, so if you go 75 days from today, we'll start from today. We can't because that'll be on the weekend. But if you go 74 days, then that's the end of December. And so what'll be interesting is because if you think about a lot of people have been crediting Bitcoin, if we just look at Bitcoin, a lot of people have been crediting Bitcoin's rise, especially this rise since the end of September, as people front running the release of or the news of the ETF. And so what's interesting to consider in my view is so what if tomorrow we get word that Grayscale or maybe Wednesday that Grayscale has launched their application for an ETF, for a spot ETF? Then is it possible that because it potentially could, I'm not saying it will, but it potentially could be the first spot ETF, could we see buying pressure go back into GBTC? Could we see upside volatility in GBTC because people are going to realize, wait a minute, Grayscale will not only be an ETF and its management fee will go down if it's approved, but it will also be the first spot ETF, which provides different kinds of benefits and different kinds of exposure, um, and doesn't have the contango issue that the futures ETF will have. And I just wonder, and I'm not saying that it will happen, I'm just speculating on the possibility that maybe it takes a couple of days, maybe it takes a week or two. Um, it's possible that we could get GBTC underperforming, Bitcoin as we move forward, and then right as we get to the end of the cycle peak, that the news comes out, or the news comes out that GBTC will get approved, and we could get a huge run up where where everybody will be kind of front running um, that event or the approval of that. Um, and again, it's just something I'm speculating on the possibility of. But anyway, suffice to say, Grayscale's not going, I'm sorry, GBTC is not going to zero. Um, Grayscale is still in my opinion, a worthy investment vehicle. And so I'm not concerned about it at all. I think that ultimately, um, wherever Bitcoin goes, GBTC will follow. And I don't think that you have anything to worry about, in my opinion. Again, not financial advice. Do your own research, and whatever you do, don't invest what you're not willing to completely lose. Um, and so that's just a quick update and my view on what's going on with Grayscale GBTC in light of price action today and the impending futures ETF approval. So thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.